How do you kill a dragon in George R.R. Martin's world? They seem so powerful, but they do die. Let's take a look at all the ways dragons have been slain and see whether we can find a pattern. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire in full and in depth. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Dunk and Egg, all of it. And The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher and more. If that sounds good, there's a subscribe button in the bottom right of your screen. Dragons seem impossible to kill. They're often referred to by fans as the nuclear weapons of the world of Ice and Fire, which is sort of fair. They completely unbalance the equation when it comes to warfare. When Aegon and his two sisters invaded Westeros, they basically took control over the entire continent with just 3 dragons. Thousands, probably tens of thousands, were killed. Stone castles were literally melted by dragonfire. Entire nations hid in fear from them. But dragons were killed. One as the Targaryens attempted to complete their invasion by subduing Dorne, and quite a few later. We will get into a really nerdy analysis of how many dragons were killed by which means in just a minute or so, but let's start with what dragons actually are, because there is nothing about them that is technically invincible. A dragon is, according to George R.R. Martin, a magical, scaled reptilian being that can live and grow for hundreds of years, their hides growing stronger and their fire-breathing fiercer. As a complete aside, the dragons in this world have 4 limbs, with wings attached to their forelimbs, as opposed to 6-limbed, 4 legs and 2 separate wings, as in many popular legends and depictions. They come in a variety of colours and shapes, some squatter and some more worm-like, for example. They are undeniably powerful, but also undeniably vulnerable. Their very power often makes them the focus of everyone's attacks, and some attacks do get through. In fact, we only know of one dragon that for sure ever died of old age during their time in Westeros. There may be more, but we don't have confirmation on them. So how have they died in the books and histories that we know? Well, to go back into ancient history, there are lots of legends, light on detail and often probably light on fact as well. Someone named Crackbones is said to have twisted a dragon's neck into a knot. Sir Galladon of Moor is said to have slain one with a magic sword that nothing could stop. And Serwyn of the Mirror Shield apparently snuck up on the dragon Uruax, hiding behind his mirrored shield, then jumped out and killed it by thrusting his spear into its eye. There may be an element of truth to these stories, but George R.R. Martin cautions us against taking legends for what actually happened. Probably slightly more reliable are the reports that during the Second Spice War in Essos, 2 Valyrian dragons were shot down and killed by Rhoynish archers, ably supported by water wizards shooting waterspouts up into the air. Then we come to the Doom of Valyria. All dragons, and humans of course, on the entire Valyrian peninsula died in a massive explosion. A few were not there, though. We'll get to the Targaryen dragons in just a moment, but there were some in Lys and Tyrosh. They were killed by the citizens of those cities in uprisings, in the upheavals that followed. One other dragon lord, Aurion, was in Qohor and headed back to Valyria on his dragon with a force of 30,000 men. None were ever seen again. So, in the time up to and around the Doom, we have dragons dying from massed arrow fire, a massive explosion, popular uprising, and presumably something mysterious and scary in the ruins of Valyria. We also have legends of heroes killing dragons with clever tactics or magic swords. So far, lots of ways to kill a dragon. But the best records we have are of the Targaryen dragons once they reach Westeros. The Targaryens brought 5 dragons with them to Dragonstone, 4 of which died before the invasion. We're not told how or why. The 5th was Balerion the Black Dread, who is the only dragon we have a very clear record of having died of old age in the year 94 after the conquest. He was probably well over 200 years old, if not even older. The first dragon of this era to die in Westeros was Meraxes, Queen Rhaenys' dragon, which was shot down over the Hellholt in Dorne, a scorpion bolt in the eye, in the year 10 AC. Then came Quicksilver in 43 AC, being ridden by Aegon the Uncrowned and killed by Balerion in a fight under the God's Eye. Balerion ripped Quicksilver's wing off, and Quicksilver fell to its death. The dragons then survived through to the Dance of the Dragons, and I should say there are obviously potential spoilers here for House of the Dragon. This is what happened in the books, which probably will happen in the show, but we can't be sure. The first dragon to die then is Anax, killed by another dragon, Vhagar. Then Melis, killed in more dragon-on-dragon combat in the Battle of Rook's Rest. Vermax, Jacaerys' dragon, died in the Battle of the Gullet, killed, it is thought, by a crossbow bolt in the eye. Stormcloud, the future Aegon III's dragon, also died of wounds from that battle from countless arrows and crossbow bolts. At which point I think we can start to see a pattern emerge. Dragons killed by other dragons, or shot down by arrows, crossbows, or scorpions. But let's keep going, because there is more. Tessarion, Vermithor and Seasmoke all fought each other in a frantic three-way fight above the Second Battle of Tumbleton. Vermithor killed Seasmoke, but also died, and Tessarion was so badly injured that he was given a mercy killing afterwards by an archer. The battle above the God's Eye also brings us two dragons killing each other, Caraxes and Vhagar. But perhaps the most shocking of all was the storming of the Dragon Pit. 4 dragons, Shrykos, Morgul, Tyraxes and Dreamfire, were killed as thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of small folk and zealots and knights and who knows who else descended on them in a place they could not escape. A 5th, Syrax, Rhaenyra's dragon, joined the fray and was also killed. Fire and Blood includes many people who claimed to be dragon slayers that day, and many possible actual causes of death, but amid the confusion and tale-telling, the usual themes emerge. Some of these were younger and more vulnerable dragons. Dreamfire got a crossbow bolt to the eye, Morgul got a spear to the eye. Some talk of Valyrian steel or magical swords. In truth, all 5 dragons were simply overwhelmed by sheer weight of numbers. As for the rest of the dance, Grey Ghost and Moondancer were killed by Sunfire, but Sunfire also eventually died from wounds sustained in battle, so that's 3 more dragons killed by other dragons. Perhaps 4 dragons survived the dance. Cannibal, a loner dragon on Dragonstone who liked eating other dragons, was never seen from again, so presumably died of old age. Sheepstealer went with Nettles to the Mountains of the Moon and also faded from history. And Silverwing made a lair on an island, and we don't know her fate yet, but she too died within a couple of decades. We also don't know the fate of Morning, Lady Rhaena Targaryen's dragon, which was born during the dance, but died again at some point after it. And after that, well, the dragons that hatched then were stunted and malformed, if they hatched at all. There's a rather dark episode where a dragon egg belonging to the infant Laena Velaryon hatches and a white wingless worm breaks out and attacks the child straight away. Alyn Velaryon, her father, flung it to the floor and hacked it to pieces, though whether that counts as a dragon killing or not is up for debate. And then the last dragon died, apparently of natural causes, in the year 153. Now, there is more than a possibility that these last dragon eggs after the dance were poisoned by the Maesters. They wanted a world without dragons, and this was their chance, hence all the malformed baby dragons, in which case we could add poisoned in the egg as another way to kill a dragon, but that theory deserves a video on its own. So simply by looking at the Targaryen era and referencing back to histories and legends, we actually have quite a clear picture emerging of how to kill a dragon. You could wait until they die of old age, of course, but if you don't want to wait a couple of 100 years, your best bet is to kill them when they are very young, ideally newly hatched. You don't need anything particularly special to do that with, a good sword will probably suffice. If they are fully grown, you ideally need another dragon to fight them with. No fewer than 10 of the Targaryens' dragons were killed by other dragons, usually older and fiercer ones. If you don't have a dragon to hand, you could try to shoot it down, though. We know that has worked at least 3 times and at least a couple more times in history. The key there is to aim for one of its few weak points, its eye for preference. A lot of dragons seem to die by being shot or speared in the eye. And if all that fails, you could just get a huge mob of people, corner the dragon somewhere it can't escape, and just rush at it. 5 were killed in the dragon pit like that, and perhaps those other dragons just after the Doom in Tyrosh and Lys. The key here seems to be to rely on overwhelming numbers and hope for someone to get lucky and hit an eye. Valyrian steel and magical swords are useful, as are, as always, bows and arrows. Despite the legends of heroes taking on dragons one-to-one, that doesn't happen in the main story, at least not successfully or yet, because of course we have 3 still very much alive dragons to consider as well. What does this How to Kill a Dragon breakdown mean for the story, though? Well, I think it means that although Dany doesn't seem to really consider the possibility all that much, George R.R. Martin has warmed us up to the idea that dragons can be killed. In fact, in a full-scale war like the Dance of the Dragons, it seems quite likely. For all their power, all it takes is a well-aimed arrow to the eye, or a mob of people willing to risk their own lives. In short, do not expect all 3 of Dany's dragons to survive this story. If you'd like more videos about the world of Ice and Fire, you can find them by clicking on the link to my playlist on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, the best way to do that is through Patreon, the link on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.